many sources are you
Right now, I've got like maybe like 9 or 10 sources developed doing PTSD, so there's lots of symptoms. So I wanted to try and find symptoms that actually, relate to that. Because I don't want to just be like, he was angry.
like
I want to be
general,
like, where does that anger come from? Or
and it's like, oh hey, this anger manifests this way, and according to this article, that's a normal way for people with sort of PTSD to have that manifest.
exactly, you get it. So that's why my essay is kind of long already. But
I mean, mine's just narcissism. No, it's not. You can get like a good solid source on that. So it's like you're just repeating that this guy's a douche.
yeah, and if anything, that's the bit that takes me longer is finding specific resources to support my argument for it. And sometimes I'll read this whole article, and I'm like, this is good, and then it just proves one thing. That's sort of
Like, I understand it's good to have like an article that disproves your point, but like not currently.
yeah, I need to be supporting this. Pick and choose. There's so much. Yeah. It's like Jesus, man. It's stress. Someone going on? Thank you. Yeah. I spent money. Weekend was throwing essays.
Professor,
Yeah.
Munched on my psychology.
despite the heat, you got any sweet treats at home to make it the day a bit better?
I mean, we bought a St. Patrick's Day cake because why not? Really? So it's something to look forward to for later.
I mean,
I don't really need an excuse, but it's a good one.
hey, I mean, Brian, you gotta
Yeah.
I mean,
How are you? Get all set. Ready. Thank you so much. And we end at 12:45. Thank you. I need a reminder. I did I don't normally, I haven't taught it 11:30 years. I know, I was gonna say. Yeah, it's like, I've been like 10, now I'm 10. Is it, was it cheesy, like, your, I thought it might be better, but I stiff with some folks. And it's been, yeah, now that they don't go to LCLS school, I don't need to drop them off. Straight eighth grade. My younger one is just 4. Oh, God. Right? You know. Growing. Yeah, which right here. It's like right in the middle. And then there's another one over here if you need one for your.
Oh,
I'll do that here.
I didn't bring a thingy.
Oh, no, okay. Honestly,
I did just buy one.
I just forget when I have.
All right, let's see. All right, no, that's you. Okay.
And I'm gonna sit right over there by the door.
Thank you.
And then we also typically have interpreters. We do have a student who is
Hearing impaired.
right, and yeah. hearing impaired. So
Deaf, hard of hearing, they like
Oh, yeah.
deaf, hard of hearing, not hearing impaired.
I know,
Gotta stay with the culture.
but it's hard because sometimes it shifts and I'm not sure I always want to be. So I
get it.
they aren't here yet, but I'm gonna sit right by the door so you can let them know that they can check in with you.
Okay, so, all right, great. Thank you for doing that. I appreciate you very much.
We have talked about depression. So we're like right on
Have
track.
excellent questions,
I hope so.
as they always do. As they always do.
They're great.
I think that's fantastic.
Yeah. Basically, my story looks like normal. So my immediate.
You're doing okay. This side.
Fine.
Yeah, the weapons.
There we go.
You look very.
I was in the English class.
Yes.
I'll keep one.
No, no need to keep quiet.
Yeah, this is nice.
All right. Thank you. All right. Here. Oh, you're so welcome.
When you're ready, I'll say hi and then.
Yeah, right now.
Guest speakers today. So what I want to do, I just want to say like one or two things and then I'm going to hand the floor over to our presenters. Please give them the same wonderful courtesy you give me of listening when they're talking and asking questions and answering questions, all those fun things. I'm not going to ask you a ton of questions about this. Definitely be paying attention. Take notes. That little resources we've given you are really helpful. One last thing too, if you do head toward the door at any point, I'm gonna be sitting right here. I won't tackle you or anything, but I will check in with you briefly. If you go to step out, just make sure everything's okay. So just want to give you that heads up. Even if you're just going to the bathroom, you can just tell me that really quickly, and that's fine. But if you step out, I will check in with you really quickly, just because of the nature of the topic. So just want to let you know as I go last time. Otherwise, they're all yours.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for having us here today. So my name is Allison Barton, the coordinator of the North Park College Student Health Center, and Ashley Garcia is my partner in crime today. She's our health education assistant at the Student Health Center. How many of you knew before I said that we even had a health center? Oh, bunch of good. Yay. Okay, that's always very good news. I'm glad to hear it. So you have a little bit of work to do before we get started. So everybody should have a booklet and then these two papers. Most of us will have a white paper and a blue paper. So what I'd like us to do immediately is start completing the survey that's on the first, just the first page of the white sheet. It should look survey-ish, right? And then when you're done with that, please read this line and this page. All right, so that's going to take us a few minutes to get everybody with that. All right. Cool. It's just wait. Really, we want you to do the front page of the white survey. And then use the blue page Oh, it is the ghost. Oh my gosh, yes. That's my mother used to say, it's Mrs. New York. This is what? It's an old movie called The Ghost of Mrs. New York. And every time anything fell at our house, my mother would say, it's Mrs. New York. It's how old. I think it's a black and white.
Okay, are we just about ready? All right, well, I think I'll get us started. So, today's topic is, and training is called QPR, Question, Persuade, Refer. And it's the, suicide prevention curriculum that our campus uses. It's been very effective. We've had a lot of students really intervene and intercede, with fellow students and other people in their lives that are considering suicide. And so, it's a tough topic though, as you read in your, as you read in the, like the little blue, sheet that I had you review. And as Eliza put it, if it's too much for you, we understand. And you know, feel free to not stick around, but do check in with us. Because we want to make sure you're okay. Does that make sense? So this has been, you know, around for a number of years. It's been a really effective program, as I mentioned before. It was developed by Dr. Paul Quinault up in Washington State. Yeah, he's a very kind of well-renowned suicidologist, a psychologist and suicidologist. And they've done a lot of research and work to really put this kind of training together so that it's very effective. I wish I were taller. I'm so sorry. I should have worn taller. I'll walk around so I can make mostly eye contact with people.
We need like a full platform.
I know, I need like a whole stage, right? That's
2-inch apple box.
100%. So I apologize in advance for not being able to be visible by everybody, but well, I'll do my best. All right. So, so this program is in two parts. The first part is sort of like background about this whole idea of depression and anxiety and suicide, and some statistics and things like that. And then the second part is going to be about the steps of QPR and how to intervene and how to help somebody that's feeling like they might be considering killing themselves. Let's see, did I want to say anything more about it than that? We know you have to check in if you're leaving. I think that's good. That's good for now. All righty. Oh, thanks. All right. So we're going to talk a little bit about early recognition and warning signs. We're going to talk about bold intervention. What does that mean to you? Right? And what are the expectations of somebody who is really employing this method? Early referral, early professional assessment and treatment, and also, and really important, and part of why we're here is just to decrease stigma. You know, to reduce the shame that's involved that some people feel and those sort of things. Because as soon as we reduce stigma, then what we see is that people are more willing to share that they're feeling suicidal, and people are more willing to help somebody who is suicidal. All right. So so it's a twofold purpose. So with that, let's get started. So QPR is not intended as a form of counseling or treatment. Probably nobody in here is a licensed therapist. Am I right? Nobody in here is that. So it's not, so you're not going to be that at the end of this hour, right? But it is intended to offer hope through positive action. And we're going to give you lots of different possible actions to take. The other thing is the brochure that we gave you has the pertinent information that we're going to be giving you. So you don't have to spend a bunch of time really worried about getting every word down on your notes or things like that, right? It's right here so you can really just pay attention and listen. Does that seem fair? Okay, good. All right. So some statistics in the United States, over 49,000 people died by suicide in the year 2023. It's pretty significant, right? It's one death every 11 minutes. That's very preventable, very preventable. So you can see other numbers up here. A lot of people seriously thought about suicide. Many made a plan and many attempted. All right, so it's a pretty significant problem. And again, it's 100% preventable, and that's where we come in. Okay, good, thanks. All right, so in California, our suicide rates are about flat. They just kind of do that. There are no big spikes or anything like that. So we could see about 4,312 suicides in 2022. And by the way, I want to say that these statistics are very, they're the newest ones that we can get, right? So a lot of times people think, oh, 2022, gosh, that was 4 years ago. That's the most recent ones we have. So just be aware of that. As you can see, it doesn't change a bunch. It really does not. Okay. So you can see that the suicide rate in California is lower, though, than in the broad United States, right? And it's Ventura counties is a little bit lower even than that. So I guess that's the good news. It's, we do a lot of work to prevent here in both California and Ventura County. All right. And then as it compares to other causes of death, so these are 2023 statistics. Again, I'd be willing to bet when we see the 2025 ones or the 2026 ones, we'll probably see COVID not be one of them, but COVID actually kicked suicide out of the top 10 across the board, across the United States, even in our state. But I think it's probably pretty close to about 11th across the board. It's still pretty high up there. It's a significant cause of death at all of those levels. All right. So culture matters. So stigma and judgment prevent people in the United States from seeking treatment for their mental health condition. So there are a lot of people that think it's crazy, to think about suicide, and they think it's bad to admit that you're crazy. You can see that kind of progression, right? And across the board, but also within certain cultural groups, it's just considered completely un-okay to share that you're having that problem and that you need help. So it's pretty problematic in a lot of cultures, in a lot of areas, and a lot of people still feel that way. We have noticed a big change in the reduction of stigma since COVID hit. A lot of people are now very willing to say, I have a mental health issue, I need help, which is great. That is great news. When I first started at this college 12 years ago, we had 1.5 mental health providers, right? So we had whatever that is, 60 hours per week of mental health providers. We now have 10, I want to say about 10 providers now, and many full-time hours worth of providers, and they are busy. So it goes to show you how much mental health issues have increased, but how much the stigma has decreased, right? So that's great news. That's wonderful news. And I'm happy to share that with you. And I want to make sure that y'all know that you have access to 6 free mental health service sessions on our campus each semester for anything. You don't have to be suicidal. It could just be any reason that you would want to have mental health sessions. So that's great news. All right. So the other issue as far as cultural considerations go is that there is a lack of culturally appropriate providers too. So A lot of times people want to have therapy in their native language, even if they speak English fluently, they still would feel more comfortable talking about their concerns with somebody in their native language if it's, or their first language, if it's not English. So that's one thing. And then just understanding the culture, right? Like you might want to speak to somebody from your own culture so they can understand your concerns in a very deep way, right? With the cultural nuances involved. Now, we are going to share a little bit later a really wonderful resource for helping people, helping yourself or others find culturally appropriate care, right? So that is an available thing. All right. So this is another culture, the LGBTQIA culture, that is that we really want to pay attention to when we talk about suicide. So as recently as 2021, 69% of LGBTQ reported feeling persistently sad and hopeless, right? And we understand that depression and hopelessness are the main indicators or the main, predispositions for suicidality. So that's really an important thing to know. 35% of trans teens have attempted suicide. That's huge, right? And then LGBTQIA plus people attempt suicide at 5 times the rate of heterosexual individuals and 8.5 times if there's family rejection. And I just want to point out here that it has nothing to do with an inherent weakness of any sort of LGBTQIA people. It has mostly to do with acceptance or the feeling of acceptance, right? So that's a really important thing for everybody to understand. It's not any sort of inherent weakness. It's more a feeling of acceptance. Okay. So at Moorpark College, we do a survey every 2 years, no, every 3 years, a health survey. And we actually just did one this fall. And in that, we discovered that about 4.7% of cis men, 4.2% of cis women reported that they had attempted suicide in the last 12 weeks, but 4.8% of trans or gender nonconforming students have. So on our campus, it's a little bit higher, but it's not, gigantically higher in that population. But that's here, at Moorpark. All right. Another area of concern and of relatively high suicidality is in the veteran community, right? So we saw in 2020 over 6,000 veterans died of suicide each day. It was the second leading cause of death among veterans under the age of 45. They have an adjusted suicide rate that is 57.3% greater than non-veterans. They account for about 13% or almost 14% of suicides, but only about half of that as far as their population goes. So they have about a double rate of suicidality than the general population. So it's another population that we are very concerned about, and that you're going to see some special resources for veterans as we go along later. All right. So, and then mental health by age. We notice that, there are ages where suicide is more common and some that are less common. A very common, or the group with the highest rate of suicide is 85 plus, and followed closely by 75 to 84. Anybody have any idea why that might be? Yeah.
Medical.
Such as, what do you mean by that?
My grandmother himself, he was denied a procedure on his heart, and as a result, he was either going to die slow and sometimes watch him die slowly, or just.
Yeah. So that's a really common one. Just a kind of a serious illness, serious or terminal illness. Thank you for sharing that. What else? What other reason? Yeah.
Could possibly be Like wanting to have others to take care of them. Yes, yeah, the not wanting to be at kind of at the mercy or a burden, right? Yeah, absolutely.
Loss of a spouse.
Yeah, so there could be depression and grief because of the loss of a spouse, or lots of your cohorts too, right? So you have people that are aging and like all their friends are going. That's another play, that's another thing.
Yeah, you're social.
Yes, and not only
Even
because of,
family.
yes, loss of friends and family, but also loss of ability to go places and do things, right? Yeah, it's interesting, so my mother-in-law is almost 94 now and developed a heart condition, and she can't drive. Probably temporarily, she can't drive herself places, and it's very upsetting for her. And luckily, she has us nearby and also friends that can take her places, and she's happy to accept that help. But there are plenty of people that don't have that, and they become very isolated. It's a very upsetting, sad situation for people. That's great. They gave me A+, so for that. Awesome job. All right. I know, they're so good. So a couple of things to notice about this here. Again, we don't have anything in Ventura County male, female, right? As far as suicide specifically, but I do want you to know that sometimes drug-induced deaths are accidental, but many times they're suicide, number one. Number two, accidental unintended injuries, car accidents, drownings, things like that. Some of those are suicide. So see how far up they are on the list and just be aware that there's some suicide numbers in there. Okay. All right. So in that same survey that I was talking about earlier, excuse me, they did kind of a suicide screening questionnaire within the survey. And you can see that, so a negative or a positive suicidal screening means that people have they're thinking about suicide, or they may have tried it or whatever, right? So for cis men and women, it's hovering around the 30%. But you can see for trans or gender nonconforming students is way more than double. So in that population, the thought of suicide, right, is far more present. So this is a population that we worry about a lot, and we put a lot of resources toward reaching, because we don't want anybody to be left out of our efforts. Yeah. You know what? It doesn't get into the weeds on that copy. That's a really good question. It doesn't get into all of the details. It's all in how somebody identifies. And you're exactly right. There's nuances within that category. A+. That's a really good question. Okay, so how has COVID-19 impacted mental health? So we're still thinking about this, right? And it's because many of you, if not most of you, did a lot of schooling at home. You missed a couple years of typical socialization, right? A lot of you during formative years. And we're noticing that between the grief loss, the academic loss, the socialization, we have a far higher rate of students really experiencing mental health issues, depression, anxiety for sure, potentially suicidality, but a lot of just socialization cues and understanding how to interact with other students. So A+ being here at school, good job. But a lot of our students really are having a hard time making up for lost time, so to speak. And so that definitely could contribute. Okay, so another thing that's really interesting is methods of suicide, some of which are more lethal than others, right? So men have a higher suicide rate
worldwide for sure, but in the US in particular. And if you look at what the method of suicide is for men, more than half of men use more than double the number of women use firearms. And far more lethal, right? And then you can see hanging and suffocation about the same, poisoning, more women than men choose that. So poisoning is like overdose, that sort of thing. And then other could be like jumping, falls, those kinds of things, drowning. But interesting new-ish statistic is that in older women, 36% are using firearms. So within the statistic, there's a lot of variation for women. So that would affect the completed suicide rate for women in that age group. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. So this is really important to understand. Undiagnosed and untreated depression is the #1 cause for suicide. Expressing hopelessness is the #1 clue, right? And sometimes people don't come out and say, wow, I'm really depressed. They'll just start acting depressed. And we're going to talk a little bit more about what that means, right? So we love to show this scan of a brain. And we can see that on the left side is a depressed brain, and the other side is a not depressed brain. What do you notice? What do you notice about those? Yeah.
There's much more activity in the brain that's not.
Way more activity. Parts of the brain are talking to each other, right? Over here, not a lot going on, right? And why that's important is because when people are suffering from depression, many times it's very difficult to be logical or a good problem solver or whatever, because the brain just is not firing on all cylinders like it normally would. Does that make sense? So as we go along and we talk about some of the signs and symptoms that we see, we're going to see how that comes into play. All right. What are some of the signs or symptoms of depression? What are some things that you already have learned about? Yeah.
Too much sleep.
Yeah, so it affects sleep. Either people sleep all the time or they can't sleep at all. Yeah. What else? Excellent.
Lack of interest in things we used to enjoy.
Normally enjoy. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Over or under eating.
Yes, changes in diet, over or under eating. What else? Yeah.
Levels of activity, so either again being very inactive or trying to be super active.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. What else? Yeah.
Association,
Like the same one.
like say they're out with friends or in a public setting, or maybe even at home, they just dissociate.
Pull away. Yeah, they're just in another place. Yeah. 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 What else? Could be isolating, so kind of similar to what you were saying, only really like them physically, like not interested in going out with their friends to begin with. Yeah.
Giving away personal possessions.
Oh, yeah, prized possessions, yeah. Could be drug and alcohol abuse, and that's a vicious cycle, right? Because sometimes that can make you want to use, and sometimes using can make you depressed. So it could be quite a vicious cycle. What else? How would a person look, maybe, to you? Sometimes they can, yeah.
Oftentimes you can't tell us better.
Sometimes you cannot tell by looking, but sometimes you can. So if what are some of the visual or visible things would you see? Perhaps, yeah.
What notice in the house?
Oh.
They seem a bit sad.
Could be. Okay, so just the overall expression could be sad. What else?
Sometimes people have personal hygiene.
Neglect personal hygiene, yeah. Is that what you were going to say? Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of similar, like weight gain or weight loss. Could be, yeah. It could just be not really caring how you look, not really having the energy to believe or whatever have you, all of those things. Yes, great job. Let's see. Okay, so loss of interest, we said that one. Heightened emotions, we didn't mention. So it could be instead of being quiet and withdrawn, it could be that they're angrier than usual or more frustrated or irritable than usual. That's not uncommon. Feelings of profound sadness, guilt, or shame, we sort of said. Change in sleeping or eating patterns, fatigue or loss of injury, we mentioned. And sometimes people can sort of be hyper too. Okay, so then we mentioned before when we saw our scans, problems with concentrating or making decisions, right? And it's because all of those parts of the brain are not firing as well as they might be or communicating with each other. Withdrawing, we said, from friends or family, helplessness, hopelessness. Sometimes it can just be some of the things that people say, or they just seem like they feel hopeless. Thoughts to be dead, thoughts of death or suicide or wishing to be dead. Sometimes people will make a comment like that too. I just wish I were dead. Just kill me now. That kind of stuff, right? All right, so there are lots of myths about suicide, and I hope that this will help us dispel them now. The first one is no one can stop a suicide. It is inevitable. Would we be doing that if this training, if that were true? No, it's really one of the most preventable causes of death around, right? If people in crisis get the help they need, they will probably never be suicidal again. All right, next one. Confronting a person about suicide will only make them angry and increase the risk of suicide. A lot of people think that. Many of you maybe have already heard that, right? Asking someone directly about suicide in interest or intent lowers anxiety, opens up communication and the risk of an impulsive act. I will tell you, I have to do this a lot. I have to ask people if they're thinking about killing themselves a lot. And I will tell you that either a person is relieved because they are thinking about it and somebody's asking, or they're relieved because they're not thinking about it. At least that's not my concern today, right? So just be aware. That is really an important thing. It brings relief to people to be asked that if they are behaving in a way that seems like they are thinking about hurting themselves or killing themselves. Only experts can prevent suicide. Of course, that's not true. We wouldn't be here, right? So suicide prevention is everybody's business and everybody can help. Anybody and everybody can help, right? Okay. Suicidal people keep plans to themselves. That's a really common myth and it's not true. Most suicidal people communicate their intent sometime during the week or so before the attempt. And you had mentioned earlier about giving away prized possessions. I can tell you that when my son was in middle school, he had a friend who killed himself, which just was devastating. But he said to me, I can't believe that he did that. He seemed so happy this week. And he even gave me his Trapper Keeper, which I know you guys don't even know what a Trapper Keeper is, but it was this very popular kind of binder that kids in middle school had at the time. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I wish you would have told me about this gift because that would have been a hint that maybe something was going on in this kid's life. So that's one way that people communicate an intent to kill themselves is by giving away prized possessions like that. Yeah.
Isn't it also like if they randomly extremely happy?
It could, yeah, it could, yes, yeah. And there's a lot of reasons behind that. One of them is just like feeling good enough to be able to form a plan kind of thing. Which is
it fools us a lot, right? Oh yeah, you're doing so much better. And the other thing is sometimes when people go on antidepressants, they have a little period of time, a couple weeks after they start, where they're at really high risk of suicide, but potentially for that reason. Yeah, that's a great comment. Thank you. All right, so let's see, where are we? Once a person decides to complete suicide, there is nothing anybody can do to stop them. Again, we wouldn't be here if that were the case. You can really do a lot to help a person through that, right? And we're going to talk more about that. Excuse me. So now we're going to talk about suicide clues and warning signs. Sometimes people will be really direct, not always, but sometimes they will. I've decided to kill myself. I wish I were dead. I'm going to commit suicide. I'm going to end it all. Those kinds of comments. Sometimes they're a little more indirect. I'm so tired, I just can't go on. My family would be better off without me. We talked about that with older friends and relatives. Who cares if I'm dead anyway? I just want out. I won't be around much longer. Those kinds of hints, right? Pretty soon you won't have to worry about me. It's really good when somebody says something like that to you to ask them more. Tell me more, what's going on, right? I don't think I'll live past 21. I'm sick of it and everyone is sick of me. So be aware too that culture and language really makes a big difference too. Different people from different groups and different cultures might say these things in a different way. In some cultures, people kid about, I'm just going to kill myself or whatever. I know myself though, I always ask the question, even if somebody says that to me, and they don't, once I've done that, they don't say that to me anymore because they don't want me to ask them, right? But I think it's worthwhile to ask the question. Even if you think that there's nothing to it or you blow it off, right? There could be something to it. And it decreases stigma. It teaches them that asking the question is okay. All right. So behavioral clues, any previous suicide attempt. If you notice that somebody has acquired a gun or is stockpiling pills, that's a good reason to, we have a lot of, like patients that are cancer patients might start stockpiling pain medication, that kind of thing. Co-occurring depression, moodiness, or helplessness or hopelessness. The more the symptoms that you see together, the more likely it is that they're thinking about suicide. Okay, putting personal affairs in order. Now, is it normal for me to put my personal affairs in order? I'm in my 60s, right? It makes sense for somebody at my age to be doing that, have a will, do all the things, right? Is it very normal for an 18, 19, 20-year-old to be doing that? Yeah, it's not. So if you start to see that kind of behavior in a young person, that's a pretty big clue. Giving away prized possessions, you mentioned that earlier. We had a student on our campus that was giving away like family heirlooms, like a necklace that she inherited from her grandmother, those kinds of things, that very special things to her. She started giving, like the Trapper Keeper, right? So when people are doing that, that is a huge clue, especially if it's a young person. All right. Sudden interest or disinterest in religion, drug or alcohol abuse, you mentioned earlier, especially after recovery. We're going to talk a little bit more about that later, but so alcohol in particular is a depressant. And if you have this underlying depression to begin with, and you're drinking alcohol, that could really be enough of a push, right? It's a very high percentage of suicides that happen that the person was under the influence of alcohol or other drugs. Really important. Here's another one too. Okay, so unexplained anger, aggression, irritability, also seeking revenge, talking or writing about death. We get a lot of reports on our campus of like English teachers, especially, will get an essay back and people will be talking, students will talk about death or talk about suicide or things like that. And then, of course, we immediately try get them help. So just be aware of that on our campus. But that's a really fairly common way of a student to convey those thoughts. The other thing is engaging in risky behaviors. So what are some examples of risky behaviors that college students particularly might do?
Reckless driving.
Reckless driving, absolutely. What else? Yeah.
Excessive substance use.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So, drinking, 5 or 6 drinks at it in a setting, and doing that daily and all those kinds of things, right? That would be that's a red flag for many reasons, but certainly for suicide, right? So just be aware of that. The reckless driving is a really common one. And so when we saw that accidental death thing earlier, it makes you wonder how many of those are actually suicides. Okay, so there are also situational triggers that make us concerned and make us want to be really aware, right, of our friend or our loved one. So being fired or suspended from school is a trigger. A recent unwanted move, also a trigger. And that's a common thing for like our military families and that kind of thing, in particular. But sometimes you have people that lose their job and then they couldn't pay the rent anymore. And so then they have to move somewhere else, move back in with their parents, or, those kinds of things can really push the needle, so to speak. Loss of a major relationship. So we, many years ago now, we had a young man that was just in class and he just started to cry in class, and his instructor was very concerned and walked him to the health center to be seen. And he had mentioned that his something about his friend's girlfriend just broke up with him, and he was really worried about it and all of that. Well, a little pulling of the string informed us that it was actually he whose girlfriend had broken up with him, and that he was thinking about killing himself over the weekend, right? So anything like that, the loss of a major relationship can really cause a lot of depression, anxiety, and suicidal thoughts in people. We mentioned this earlier: death of a spouse, child, or best friend, especially if by suicide. And then we mentioned this earlier also: diagnosis of serious or terminal illness, right? So those are all situational clues or triggers. Again, sudden loss of freedom or fear of punishment. So people going to jail, going to prison, that could be a common one. Loss of financial security, losing your job, those sorts of things, being in debt. Debt is a huge one. Fear of becoming a burden to others, we mentioned. Humiliation, bullying. Are college students humiliated, bullied, or exploited by others? Does that happen? Yes, it sure does. We've had a lot of experiences in the last several years right on our campus with social media kind of bullying. And it's very upsetting to people, and it can cause a lot of these types of issues. We always want to help students that are experiencing that, right? And then loss of a cherished therapist, counselor, or a teacher. Yeah.
So what do you guys do for the bully?
So if we find out about it, we actually create. So on our campus, we have this thing called the BIT report. I don't know how many of you have ever heard of this before, but like, for example, if your professor noticed that you were having you were upset and you were reporting that you were being bullied, or that you were not looking quite right in class, all the things that we just mentioned, she could actually write this thing called a BIT report. And we actually have a team on our campus, a multidisciplinary team, that receives these bits and then check in with the student.
All right, if is the staff on campus screened so they're not part of any like weird online things themselves?
Are staff screened?
Yes.
to not be part. I think, I don't think anybody screened that way necessarily. I'm not exactly sure what the HR policy or procedures are about that. But I can tell you that if human resources would find out that an employee was involved in any shenanigans like that, that there would be repercussions. Does that make sense? Yeah, but there's no way to know everybody's story, right? But if somebody reported that they were experiencing bullying in that way, and the perpetrator was somebody at this campus and
Yeah,
at the
part of the
school,
staff, yeah.
part of the staff, part of the faculty, another student, we definitely would meet with them and work on the problem. Does that make sense? We've had a lot of students report stalking and things like that. What is often the case, though, is that the stalker or the bully or the whoever is not another student here. And so what we can do about that is a little less. We can report it to the police or encourage them.
Police doesn't do anything, not even campus police.
Well, it just depends on the situation. No, it does. It depends on the situation, but if maybe we can chat after about individual issues. But definitely, we do our best to support students. Okay. Any other questions, comments, concerns about this before we move on to the next? Okay, so now we're heading into part 2, and Ashley's gonna do this part
Okay.
with you.
If you guys need to shake it off, I know we went through a lot of statistics and information, and then this does not look like a statistics class. It's not statistics. So ask the questions, save a life. So now we're gonna talk about asking the questions, what to do, what not to do. Okay. Tips for asking the question. Number 1, if in doubt, don't wait. Ask the question. Okay. Asking the question is more important than the way you say it. And we're gonna get through a good way to say it because you don't want to be too aggressive when you ask someone. You don't want them to feel uncomfortable, but we'll get to that. If the person is redundant, be persistent. Be persistent with them. Show them you care. Show them that you're there for them. Talk to the person alone in a private setting. Sometimes if it's out in the open, they might not feel comfortable enough to tell you how they're actually feeling. So find a quiet place, find a place that they feel comfortable in. I know coffee shops are sometimes loud, but there's been some studies showing that coffee actually helps with depression. Just an idea. Allow the person to talk freely and free of judgment. Give yourself plenty of time to talk to them and allow them to just open up. Have your resources handy. So take your QPR card, phone numbers, counselor's name, and other information that might help. So you can even take your packet with you if you're ever in that situation with someone. So here's a less direct way to approach the question. So you could ask, have you been unhappy lately? Have you been really unhappy? Have you been feeling really unhappy lately that you've been thinking about ending your life? That one's a little more direct. For children, there's also a question do you ever wish you could go to sleep and never wake up? I mean, I think you could even use this for adults as well. Keep in mind when you do this training, you're using it on people that you already know. So find a verbiage that you feel comfortable with. These people, the signs, which is really important to realize. You are gonna know that either they're gonna be your friends, your family, co-workers, classmates. So you're gonna be able to tell when something's off. A direct approach would be when people are hurting or upset as much as you are, they sometimes wish they were dead. I'm wondering if you're feeling that way too. Or you could just say directly, are you thinking about killing yourself? And if you can't ask the question yourself, find someone who can. You could even try to connect to someone that is closer to them. Connect to a family member or someone they trust to ask the question. Okay, how not to ask a suicide question. So you're not thinking about killing yourself, are you? Or you wouldn't do anything stupid, would you? or suicide's a dumb idea, I'm sure you're not thinking about suicide. So why do you think this is a bad way to ask them?
Yeah, I don't have a further.
I would say it's a bit rude.
Yeah, yeah. You don't want to feel like you're gonna be judging them because once they feel that kind of harsh behavior, they're not gonna.
So yeah, to caveat off that, it's just kind of you're demeaning their feelings of it by kind of already putting that projection on them. So you're already dismissing them before they even had a chance to explain themselves.
Yeah, correct. Anyone else?
It increases a feeling of stigma or potential shame.
Yeah, it increases the stigma. So, and that's what we're not trying to do, especially with this training, we're trying to decrease the stigma. Okay, persuade. So, how to persuade someone to stay alive? So, listen to their problem and give them your full attention. Remember that suicide is not the problem, only the solution to an insoluble problem. You know, offer them different options. Like, okay, so if they explain to you, they open up, like, this is why. You could walk through it with them, be like, no, but what if we do this? What if we find this solution? Don't rush to judgment, which is why we talked about how not to ask the question. Offer hope in any form, tell them, I'm here for you. I want you to stay alive. Like, let's find a solution to whatever's going on. So it best works when you do the following. So persistent statements that suicide is not a good solution and suggest better alternatives that could be found. That's kind of what we went through right now. Focus on healthy alternative solutions to problems, not the suicide solution. And we talked about it already. Make sure that any solution that they're going to try is healthy for them, not alcohol or drugs, which is very often. Usually when people feel really upset, they turn to that. And as we know, like that's not really a good solution. Accept the reality of someone's pain, but offer alternatives. So make sure that you consider their feelings, you don't neglect the way they're feeling, and you respect it. Collaborate with the person and assure them of your ongoing support. And once again, offer hope in any form and in any way. So if they have told you that they had a treatment before and it didn't work, you could say, what if this time it does work? Because that is a thing that some people are like, well, I've already taken like therapy before, it's not going to work. Or I already taken antidepressants, it's not going to work. But you could encourage them to try it again. One thing that is really prominent is that sometimes when people go see therapy, they don't think it works because they didn't really connect with their therapist, And sometimes it takes a while of seeing a different therapist to know who really connects with you, who really gets you to open up. And in a little bit, we're going to show you like a website that you could use to find someone in the area that you feel like you would be more connected with. We also have a really good diverse team on campus, I will say, as well. So refer. Suicidal people often believe that they cannot be helped, so you may have to do more. The best referral is actually taking the person directly yourself and ask, will you go with me to go get help? The second best referral is getting a commitment from them to accept the help and making the arrangements to go get that help. So ask, will you let me help you get help? And one more thing too, I know we did mention that you get 6 free therapy sessions per semester, but you get unlimited crisis walk-ins. So that does not count towards your 6. Like if there's a day where you're feeling really overwhelmed, you need to talk to someone, that does not count through your 6. You could go to the health center, or you could take someone to the health center if they're going through a crisis. So the third best referral is to get a referral information and try to get a good faith commitment for them not to complete or attempt a suicide. So any willingness to accept help at the time, even in the future, is a good outcome. So you could ask them, will you promise me not to kill yourself until we found some help? Once again, commitment to sorority is super important, and your willingness to listen and to help can rekindle hope and make all the difference. Okay, so I don't know if you guys want to take a picture of this. We have the suicide hotline, the 9-800 number. Right here we have the veterans, the 9-800 and press 1. We have the Trevor Project Lifeline for the LGBTQIA plus community. We have the crisis text help right there, the courage. And then we have both the services for LA County and Ventura County as well. Okay. And this is the website we were talking about. So psychologytoday.com. So here you could actually look through the different therapists online and see who resonates with you. And we also have this other one, I believe it's in Spanish, the inclusive therapist.
It's not just
Any language?
whatever languages are represented, so that's really nice. Not just linguistically different, but also different cultures, LGBTQIA therapists, those kinds of things.
Oh, also another thing if you guys didn't know before, is that we have embedded therapists throughout campus in different sections. So we have an embedded therapist in the Pride Center. We have one in Edam. We have someone who works with the nurses. We have a therapist in Veterans on Mondays. We have a therapist in Raider Central. Raider Central. So, and performing arts as well. So, and athletics. Thank you. I always forget because it's like and athletics. So, sometimes like if you don't feel as comfortable going to the health center, they're in those embedded spaces, you could go see if you could see them there. Okay, safety guidelines, because we also care about your safety. So this is when you should call 911. So number 1, if a person has a weapon or an object that can be used as a weapon. Number 2, if you're speaking over the phone with someone who expresses intent to harm themselves or others. If there is an overdose of pills, drugs, or there's any signs of physical injury, also at the health center, we do have an overdose kit. So you could take one just in case anything ever happens. There's Narcan in there. If you were confronted with a hostile or armed person, please leave the area. Attempt to isolate the person and attempt to observe their direction of movement, but from a safe distance. Make sure your safety is super important. And report any of the observations to authorities. Okay, remember, since almost all efforts to persuade someone to live instead of attempting suicide will be met with agreement and relief, don't hesitate to get involved or take the lead. Okay, so for effective QPR, say, I want you to live, I'm on your side, we'll get through this. Get others involved, so ask the person who else might be a good contact to help them, whether it's families, friends, brothers, sisters, pastors, priests, rabbi, bishop, physician. Join the team and offer help with clergy, therapists, psychiatrists, whoever is going to provide the counseling or the treatment. Follow up with a visit, a phone call, a card, and let the person know that you care about them and what happens, and caring may save a life. So I know we're running out of time, but let's practice. So we're going to give out 2 sheets, so get into pairs of 2. One person is going to be the individual trying to ask the question, and the other student is going to be the individual thinking about committing suicide. And we will go around and help you. I know sometimes it can be difficult to ask the questions, but we're here to help. You want to do that side? Yeah. Right.
I'm slow, you'd win.
Oh, no shade, no shade.